Hello, and God's blessings from St. Francis Xavier College Church as we continue in the Easter season. And once again, I invite you to reflect and pray over our daily readings, which can be found at the usccb.org website. Today, I'll focus my reflections upon our Gospel from John. Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. John. Jesus went across the Sea of Galilee. A large crowd followed him because they saw the signs he was performing on the sick. Jesus went up on the mountain, and there he sat down with his disciples. The Jewish feast of Passover was near. When Jesus raised his eyes and saw that a large crowd was coming to him, he said to Philip, "Where can we buy enough food for them to eat?" He said this to test him, because he himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 200 days' wages worth of food would not be enough for each of them to have a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, the brother of Simon Peter, said to him, "There is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what good are these for so many?" Jesus said, "Have the people recline." Now there was a great deal of grass in that place, so the men reclined, about 5,000 in number. Then Jesus took the loaves, gave thanks, distributed them to those who were reclining, and also as much of the fish as they wanted. When they had had their fill, he said to his disciples, "Gather the fragments left over, so that nothing will be wasted." So they collected them and filled 12 wicker baskets with fragments from the barley loaves that had been more than they could eat. When the people saw the sign he had done, they said, "This is truly the prophet, the one who is to come into the world." Since Jesus knew that he was going to come, that they were going to come and carry him off to make him king, he withdrew again to the mountain alone. The Gospel of the Lord. This description in John's Gospel of the feeding of the crowds with the 5 loaves and the 2 fish is the beginning of the chapter 6, which is often called the Bread of Life discourse, where Jesus, after feeding them and after walking upon the water, sits down with the crowds and the disciples and offers this long speech, this discourse upon the bread of life. But this miracle is what generates and what precipitates his speaking of himself as the gift of the bread of life. Interestingly enough, the feeding of the crowd with the fish and the loaves is the only miracle attributed to Jesus in all 4 of the Gospels. There's healings, there's exorcisms, but it's the only one that is in detail described by all 4 of the evangelists. So clearly, this is an essential aspect of the ministry of Jesus. This is an essential aspect of his proclamation of the good news. And there's many, many ways to enter into the story. But I think one of the things all of the evangelists highlight is the superabundance. That from very meager beginnings, a few loaves, a few fish, all eat, and not only eat, but are satisfied. And not only are satisfied, but there's more than enough left over. That sense that in the person of Jesus Christ, that all are not only fed, but they have more than enough that they need. That there's an abundance, an overflowing of gifts of God in Jesus Christ, is something all of the evangelists focus upon. That with our God, there is never a sense of being stingy or meager, of his grace being doled out in small parcels, but rather the grace of God at work in Jesus Christ is more than we can ever need, more than we can ever hope for, more than we can ever imagine. God bless.